Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated. Drink as much as 8 glasses of water a day. Water is the Earth's liquid gold, but before you grab that next glass or even give it to your children, my guests say we need to be better educated about what exactly is in our drinking water. This is a Wellness Wednesday conversation, and tonight we're asking that question, what's in the water? My guests are Dr. Akmal Muakil, founder and president of the Healing Institute of the Healing Arts, and David Steinman, investigative journalist and author of the new book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Let me start with a couple of facts. Right now, the United States ranks 23rd in the world for safe drinking water, which is kind of near the bottom for comparable nations. And almost half of the drinking water in the U.S. is contaminated with chemicals known as PFAs, or forever chemicals, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is expected to announce water supply testing rules in October, but not required for schools to fix current contaminated water. So let me start from your perspective, Mr. Steinman. Do you believe that U.S. drinking water is safe for adults and children? Why or why not?
No, it isn't. And the reason why is that about half the water supplies now in the U.S. have contaminants, like, as you mentioned, forever chemicals, dioxane, they can have lead, and even the chemicals that are legally allowed in the water, the levels are too high. So, for example, to make water safe, it's always disinfected with chlorination processes. But these processes themselves produce carcinogenic or cancer-causing chemicals that end up in the water supply. That's why it's so important to not fall for the myth that our drinking water is safe just as it is from the tap. There's certain things we need to do if we really want to make it safe.
Well, your opinion, Dr. Muakil, about the U.S. drinking water supply and what we get from our tap?
Well, like he said, the water in the United States, specifically, because that's where we live at, is very contaminated. Not only does it have other chemicals, you can find some PCB in it, as well as lead. And when you start talking about schools, most of the schools have been around for 50, 60, 70 years, and the pipes haven't been changed within the school. And so now you're putting that into these children, which, especially lead, causes issues with their brain and behavior problems. So, our water is definitely not safe. And then the other part of that is the fact that because our water is not safe, now we have predators. And the predators are companies who are bottling water and selling it on the market, and you really don't know what you're getting when you're drinking this water. The levels are very high and very carcinogenic, which is that cancer causing. Not only that, we're finding that folks who are drinking some of this water wind up with things like hypertension and diabetes because of the fact that the water is just not safe to drink.
Well, most experts, physicians would say we don't drink enough water as it is. And I certainly know that I try to drink as much water as I possibly can, but I'm really not very, very good at it. And there are all of these options out here, David, for for people who decide not to drink tap water, for example. You've got disrespectfully expensive water filters for your refrigerator. You have purified water in the grocery store. You have spring water in the grocery store. You have other kinds of bottled water. What is the alkaline water? You have sparkling water and flavored water. And so, with how is someone to know, David, what they should and should not drink?
Well, I come from it from a little different kind of perspective, and I'll tell you what I mean. I'm really anti-plastic bottled water, period. One, the plastic does leach chemicals like phthalates into the water. But two, when I wrote my book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins, I spent a lot of time in vulnerable communities in Louisiana, in New York State, throughout the country, New Hampshire. And in these communities, when the water was bad, the folks would end up buying tons of bottled water. The thing is, like when I'm in Louisiana, Cancer Alley, the plastic for that bottled water is being made right there, and it's killing the people. So they're being asked to buy these products, but the products are killing them, not just because their water there is very polluted. It has atrazine in it, for example, which is a pesticide that's being used on the cane fields. But then they're being asked to bring in bottled water, and those plants are making the polyethylenes that are used to make the plastic. So to me, it's really, really bad stuff. So I like people to think about filtering their water. Now, when I'm working with folks, and when I wrote my book, I'm an activist. So I know what it's like to live on a budget, or rather, I know what it's like to live without a budget.
I hear you.
I'm always jury rigging things time after time. So I wanted to make sure folks could take care of themselves for the least amount possible. The first thing that anyone has to do, whether they're in Maryland, DC, they have to assume there's something bad in the water. That is the safe approach. And then the very least they need to do is get themselves a faucet filter. One of my kids just moved to New York City, and I spent $25 to get them a little faucet filter, like from Pure or Brita. They do a really good job of filtering out about 85% of most of the chemical toxins to which you'll be exposed. It's $25. We can afford that. And that's better than any health insurance policy. So I want you to drink your water, but I kind of want people to be a little more thoughtful and anti-toxic about it. Plastic bottled water, it's just asking us to pollute the water supplies more and kill ourselves. All the transportation involved in bringing water from Arkansas or Fiji or wherever it's coming from, those transportation gases are what are leading to climate change or global warming. So I really do think filtration is the most economic. And also I'm lazy. I don't want to lug all those bottles. So to me, filtration, and you can go further. You can get a pitcher filter. Like when I went down to St. James Parish in Louisiana, and I knew the folks there were drinking that plastic bottled water because they couldn't drink their tap water. I brought these zero water pitchers. They filter out all the PFAS. So you go from the faucet filter into the pitcher filter, put it in your water, and you've got some very, very safe drinking water.
What do you drink, Dr. Muakil?
I drink distilled water. I've been drinking distilled water since about 1975. Okay. And, I do watch that. Matter of fact, you're talking about a distillery. Now let me say this to your audience. It's not the kind of distillery where you make moonshine. Okay. So we got to get that straight. But using a water distiller, similar to a filter that works with that. Where I live, I have well water. So I'm always peaking the pH balance of that, but I also are working to take out other contaminants so that they don't go into my body. The other thing about that is the fact that when we start talking about the science of how much water you should drink, there is no real science about that. And the other piece of that is the fact that every time you eat a vegetable, every time you eat some fruit, okay, you're getting distilled water. Distilled water has nothing in it, okay? And what it does is it goes into the system and moves out minerals. A lot of people say, well, it's moving minerals. It is. It's moving the minerals that the body is displacing, okay? So that what happens is it begins to purify the body in that manner. So when we start talking about bottled water, you're right, David, where we're talking about the fact that the jugs of water, and I've stopped buying them now, but the jugs of water, the chemistry from the polyethylene from the container is leaking into the water. One of the major places that it hits is your kidneys.
Yeah.
Look around and see, growing up in the 50s, there was a church in one corner, a liquor store in the other. Then it got to be a church, liquor store, fast food. Then it got to be a church, liquor store, fast food, and a dialysis center.
Yes, absolutely.
And we got dialysis growing like wildfires.
Yeah.
Because
kidney cancer is really on the increase. You know where else those little plastic particles go? They go into those are called nanoplastics.
Mm-hmm.
And they go into, for example, and a lot of them have estrogenic effects. That means they're kind of anti-testosterone. They go into the boys' testicles. They go into the placenta. And studies have found now that boys with the most nanoplastics have the lowest levels of testosterone. In fact, one of my kids' friends had really low levels of T, and he purposely he and his younger brother went on a low plastic diet, if you can believe we're thinking that way now. But they started avoiding as much plastic as possible, and his T levels went way up.
Mm-hmm.
So, they go into your testicles, they affect your kidneys.
Yeah.
And, there are stories all over the country, like in Cortland, Alabama. There's a fast food manufacturing plant there that's spilling those forever chemicals into the Tennessee River. Mm-hmm. And in the towns along the river, you have kidney dialysis centers popping up everywhere. Right. And then they say, well, drink more plastic bottled water. It's kind of an insanity because we're being asked to perpetuate the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead.
One of the things that, that I look at when we start talking about water, when you start talking about who's manufacturing the water, and that's a piece that I really look at. Because, where does purified water come from and what do they do to purify it? Okay. When we have the pollution, when we have global warming, and when you're bringing it from a stream, what kinds of chemicals are going through that stream? Trying to find real pure water in this day and age is really a chore, because of the factor of all of the pollution from us putting plastic in the sea, okay, to the kinds of things that are dumped in the rivers, from manufacturing plants. And so all of this is coming through our water system. I remember,
Dr. Moorkill, don't forget your point, because I'm going to let you continue after I take a break. But don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm is coming up next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. This is a Wellness Wednesday conversation as we ask what's in the water. My guests are Dr. Akmal Muakil, founder and president of the Healing Institute of the Healing Arts, and David Steinman, investigative journalist and author of the new book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins. He is also the director of the Healthy Living Foundation. Dr. Muakil, you were making a point before the break. Please continue.
So I remember when I was a photographer and actually a photojournalist, and I was working with the Washington Informer newspaper when Marion Barry, who was the mayor at the time, decided that I can't remember the water. It's in Southeast plant was to start to make it so that you could drink water from the Potomac. Mm-hmm. And we went through there and he drank the water and everybody was like, I don't know about that. But you have to look at the fact of what kind of chemicals are coming from that, because when you go by there, what happens is in the summertime, especially with it being hot, you smell the stench from the water that they've actually purified. So the piece of that is the fact that when we start talking about these water plants, where are they getting the water that they're purifying? First off, the chemistry that they're putting in it, and how is that chemistry causing issues with us in terms of us being able to maintain the fluidity of the water of the body? The water is like 75 to 80% of water. So we have to have that water. But when it goes in polluted, the liver has to break it down, as well as the kidneys. And so as we do that, are we going into a place where we will wind up at some point not being able to really drink the water?
Yeah, I get that. I did want to go back to something that you said earlier about, fruits and vegetables, and every time you eat fruits and vegetables, that you do get distilled water. Certainly for many communities of color, that in and of itself is an issue because there are food deserts. Not to mention that, more broadly, communities of color or otherwise, people aren't eating their fruits and vegetables like they should be, like your mama told you to.
Right.
When when you were a kid. So I think, that certainly is a bigger issue. But Dr. Muakil, I did want to drill down just a little bit more on what you said about this distilled water, so that I can kind of get some clarity for those who are interested in distilling their own water. So do you have a rain barrel in your house? How does that work exactly?
So they can go to the internet. I'm not going to mention where they go because everybody know where they go when they decide that they want to buy some stuff. So they can go to the internet and put in water distillery. And what
does it look like at your house? Tell me, how does it work?
So what you do is you hook it up to the faucet, you put it on like a filter, you put it on the faucet. And when you put it on the faucet, what then begins to happen is that you allow the water to come through it. And once the water comes through it, what will happen is that you have a jar that's glass. For me, I use glass. And what happens is that you turn a little spigot and the water flows into the glass, and you turn it off and you drink it. It makes about a gallon, a day if you do it in that manner. And so when you do that, your water is purer than it is if you buy it in a bottle.
I see. And so you're using the water that comes through the DC water system, and then you distill it yourself. Is that?
No, I have where I live at. I have a well.
Okay, so you're distilling well water.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's just wanted to make sure I understood what what your process was. So, David, if I may, how do you know if the water in your local schools is contaminated? Certainly, in the wake of the pandemic, we're not seeing working water faucets anymore. And so how do children in schools get water now?
That's such a great question. I discussed in my book, and I have a chapter called The New School Rules. And I start the chapter with a family in New Hampshire who sent two of their kids to preschool. And unbeknownst to them, about a year after the kids started at preschool, they learned that the well from which the water was being drawn for their kids' preschool had the forever chemicals in it. When they did a blood test, mom's two kids had very, very high levels of the forever chemicals. And so one of the big lessons she learned from that, and that you can learn from that, is you have to test the kids' water at your school, whether it's preschool, high school, even college. You need to have that water tested. And now some schools do testing, and you can request these records. So the first thing a parent has to do is write to the administration, email them, and just say, hey, I would like any reports on lead testing for our school, and request them. Now, the school may gaslight you. They may send you back something that says, all reports that we have show the levels are within allowable ranges. But that's gaslighting, because there is no safe level of exposure to chemical carcinogens for anyone, but especially when it's your own child. So you have to request that. Now, suppose the school doesn't have those records. Then you need to get together with other parents in your school, or if you can afford it, do it on your own, and have your child draw water from the faucet in the classroom, or from one of the drinking water faucets, and send it to a water testing lab, and spend about $100 to $150 to have that water tested. Now, the reason why that's important is our kids don't just potentially drink the water. Their school food will be cooked in it. If they're on some of the sports teams, like water polo, they'll be working out in it. They shower in it after PE. So they're nearby shops where they may hang out after school, and get their drinks and stuff, fountain drinks. Those will likely be contaminated. So you can't, as a parent, expect that when you send your kid off to school today, that it's a safe environment. You need to now be, I hate to say it, but you need to expect that it's an unsafe environment. And that one of the most unsafe things about your school will be the drinking water. Now, suppose your school has bad drinking water, or suppose you don't have the money to test. Get your kid a little stainless steel silver flask and put their drinking water in it every day for them to go to school, and educate them about the sports they should do. If the water's polluted and they're doing water polo or swimming team, that's not good. Maybe they should do another sport, basketball, who knows? Of all the sports, because of the stuff on our turf and everything, basketball often seems like the safest sport. But rowing, whatever other sports. But you have to assume that the drinking water will not be safe, and then do the right things after that, which means testing or giving your child a safe flask in which they can bring their own drinking water.
So, from an activist standpoint, let's say you have the wherewithal to have your school's drinking water tested where your child is attending, and the results that come back are not good. What do you do then? What would you want? How would that be addressed?
That's such a great question. And here's where you're going to be left to your own devices. The school is not going to help you. Okay. The school is not going to have the budget. We faced a similar situation in Louisiana, in Reserve, Louisiana. Then it wasn't water, it was air, because the kids are living right next to a neoprene plant. But what we did, and you can do the same for your school, is usually every classroom has a parent who's the leader of the classroom, and all the parents can get together. If you can afford $5 to $10 each parent, you can get your kids a really good filtration system for your classroom that the kids can use. Again, what I said about the faucet filters, that's good. You can have pitcher filters for the kids in the classroom. But what I suggest is parents form a green team. Now, if you're in an elementary school, the green team is per classroom, right? Because that's how elementary schools work. High schools and middle schools, generally the green team is more school-wide because it's a larger system. But you need to provide that green team. If it's a small school and it's your child's classroom, you get together with the other parents, you get those filters I've talked about. The other kind besides distillation is reverse osmosis, which is about $300. But that would also be a good alternative to the polluted water. So you have to work with the parents. The teachers themselves will be helpless. The school administration will be feckless. It's up to you, mom and dad, to do this.
If I could chime in from this. So and what David is talking about is right. But there's another piece to that we should look at as well in terms of water, bathing and showering, because the integumentary system, which is the skin, breathes and it absorbs those toxins into the body. That's a lot of the children might have asthma because of the factor of the chemistry from the water going into their system. When we start looking at that, filtration is key and profound because of that. You're brushing your teeth with it, you're washing your face with it, okay, and you're bathing it. And if you, I don't know if people still bathe, because they got showers now, but if you bathe in that water, you're sitting in that water for at least 15, 20, 30 minutes. And so all of that's going into your system, and it's affecting your organ network. So now, you get out and say, oh, I feel so good. That was a nice bath. But then later on down the road, you start to get Arthur, and you say, well, where'd that come from? And the doctor can't tell you, but it came from the fact of the chemicals that have built up in your system from you taking a bath. Now, don't get me wrong. You need to bathe. Okay. You need to bathe, but absolutely. Okay. But the piece is right. No question. But the piece about that is the fact that filter the water and the filter, like he said, $25. Yeah. Matter of fact, you can get one for less than that. That works very well. You can buy them with charcoal in them, so that the charcoal purifies the water. I mean, so nowadays we have alternatives to help us to have safe and clean water, opposed to 50 years ago when it was just coming through the pipe. And the other piece about that is the fact that because of these lead pipes in these schools and in some of these buildings, it leaches out the calcium. Yeah. Which now creates issues with osteoporosis. And it creates issues with cognitive behavior. So when you put filters on it, what happens is that now them chemistries don't come through, and they don't displace minerals in your body that your body needs for it to function.
You were about to say something, David.
Oh yeah, and these aren't abstractions. One of the things I noticed in writing my book is it was so easy to meet victims, kids who were hurt, kids who had high levels of the PFAS or lead in their systems. When I began all this reporting on antitoxics in the 80s, we were in a time of darkness. There was no internet. And the way that industry worked or polluters worked to keep doing what they were doing was to keep us isolated so that none of us told our stories and we didn't share our stories. Now, because of the internet. I meet people all the time who say, well, my kid got kidney disease, or I have kidney cancer and I'm in my 50s, or I need dialysis, or I can't carry my pregnancy to full term. But now we know that the reasons why are because of nanoplastics and pollutants. It's not abstract in the least. Also, think about this when you're giving your child a bath or taking one yourself. All the personal care products that you're using, they add more pollutants into that water. Like if you're giving your baby a bath in bubble bath, my group, Healthy Living Foundation, has tested so many baby bath products with chemicals like phthalates in them. Those phthalates move from, or dioxane, from what are called ethoxylated detergents like sodium lauryl sulfate, which you'll see on your baby bubble bath. These contain chemicals like dioxane that cause cancer that go into the water. And then, as the doctor said, they're absorbed through the skin systemically. So you are also polluting your water at the same time, often with the kinds of personal care or cosmetic products you're using with yourself or your children. But the thing is, these aren't abstractions. Your kids are smarter when they have less pollution. They're better behaved. And as adults, they'll stay healthier. The other thing is, it's nature nurture. Mom and dad, or you, whoever you are, when you do these things, you take care of your own body too. You can't just take care of your kids and not take care of yourself. So it goes. Yeah.
So let me share this with you. So I have a friend of mine who is a breast cancer survivor, but she is also wealthy. That is not an exaggeration. She is wealthy, a multimillionaire. And years ago, when I visited her home, in her cavernous utility room, there was a huge water filtration system that cost thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. But again, I reiterate, she was wealthy. And she mentioned that, after, breast cancer surgery and all of these kinds of things, that she began to drink water that was filtered. I mean, and when I say cavernous, this was something out of a science fiction movie. It was huge. It was a room that was probably 20 by 30 feet. It was just for the water filtration system, not just for drinking, but also for bathing for the entire family. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, I had the opportunity many years ago to get an estimate for a water filtration system for my home, which was well beyond my ability to afford it. But one of the things that I did notice was that compared to the water coming out of my faucet, after the water went through a few filtration system that they brought in, I could feel the difference. With that said, your layperson will say, well, everything causes cancer these days. And so, if I drink water as you two are recommending, then something else could possibly give me cancer. Whenever I do breast cancer interviews, because we talk about that a lot on this program, and I always ask doctors every time there is some new development, I always ask them the question that breast cancer patients, for example, and it could be any cancer, but I'm speaking about breast cancer, why is this happening, doc? Where is this coming from? And the answer that I always get is, we don't know. And so I guess, just kind of playing the devil's advocate here, if I grew up drinking from the faucet, from the hose outside as a kid, and as a child in the 1970s, okay, but my same family was also at the barbecue, okay, eating, pig feet and drinking Craigmont sodas and all of that other stuff. And knock on wood, Dr. Muakil, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'm feeling fine.
Mhm.
What do you say to those people who are feeling fine?
So the piece of that is this. They're right. We can't really pinpoint cancer other than the fact that there's some kind of carcinogen, there's some kind of disharmony going on with the cells. It could be water, it could be them pig feet, that kind of thing. I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, I ate it, so it could be that.
I know you did.
I did. Listen,
I know you did.
I was always under the table when that was happening. You know what I mean? And now it's 74. Moving towards 75. The piece of that is the fact that I've changed my lifestyle, and so with changing that, I have put in more foods that have antioxidants to them. I eat foods that are not processed, you see, and then the water that I drink is water that's purer. And when you talked about the filter in my basement, okay, I have filters, water storage tanks because of and I have to treat my water so that with salt and other things, so that it won't cause me to have parasites and other things and iron deficiencies and that thing. So when you start talking about that, the first thing I would say to a person is, look at your lifestyle and see where your lifestyle is, and then determine what kind of water you want. Now, I did a program on Monday and I talked about acid alkaline balance. We got a lot of people who are running towards that alkaline water.
Yeah. Real quick, what is that? And because I'll tell you, I've tasted it. I don't like it.
The piece of that is that some of it's gone through electrolysis. They've manipulated the molecules of it to give it a pH balance of 9. Well, distilled water is at a 7. Your blood is at a 7.35. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to take your blood over 8, because when you do, then you have the possibility for cancer. See, because that scale goes from 0 to 14. From 1 to 6, it's acid. From 7 to 14, it's alkaline. But this is the piece about alkaline. When you get to 12, you have bleach. When you get to 14, you have lye. Okay, so now you got to keep it in a place where it's in line with the 7.35. So when you start talking about putting alkaline water in your system, mm-hmm. you have to understand how you're doing that and why you're doing that. Because at a 9, you can wind up with cancer in the same way you can at a 5.3.
Yeah. David, your thoughts real quick?
Yeah, I think that one of the myths that whatever you want to call it, industry, whoever is against health, loves for people to feel is there's nothing I can do about it. I'm helpless because, as you said, everything causes cancer. But the truth is, we know from studies that when people change their diets, for example, they so markedly to organic foods, they so vastly reduce their exposure to chemical toxins that when they're studied in the long term, they actually do have lower rates of cancer, eczema, obesity, diabetes. I like to think that we're talking to intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
And as intelligent people, one of the things we learn is to ask questions. When I first got into all of this, it was because I was poisoned by DDT and the fish I ate from the Santa Monica Bay in California.
Oh, okay.
And I testified before Congress, and then people started saying, well, what about my hamburger? What about my lettuce? They were asking questions to challenge me, but they were good questions. So really, when we're talking about water, the larger issue is, how do we take care of our health? And water is but one aspect of it. But then you want to talk about food, personal care, cleaning products, your community. And thinking this way requires real intelligence. It requires folks to just want to ask questions and to care. So I really want to appeal to people to ask those questions. Like, just for example, I came across a couple, getting back to water. The woman drank Pepsi, he drank sweet tea, a tea made. They learned 30 years after their marriage that the water he was drinking for his tea had PFAS, but her Pepsi was bottled elsewhere. He died of kidney cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So all they needed to know was ask the question, is my water safe? But they didn't know to ask it. So in what I'm writing and raising healthy kids, it's sort of like becoming a black belt and protecting yourself from chemical toxins. It's a first degree black belt. You kind of know all the areas you need to explore, and you basically need to know how to do it. But you need to keep fertilizing your mind with more questions. Okay, if this is in my water, should I worry about my food? Should I be concerned about and people will ask these questions, and the answers are there. So don't be disempowered. Actually, when you do these things, even though you may do them haphazardly and learn over time, as we all are, the results are that you will have fewer cancers, your kids will be healthier. This isn't a pie in the sky. We have the published and peer-reviewed studies that prove this. So not everything causes cancer, first of all. There's very few chemicals that actually do cause cancer, okay? Mm-hmm. And second of all, we have the power in our vote, put people into office to really make a difference, but we have to also educate our politicians. Like, for example, we're talking about the forever chemicals. Mm-hmm. Fun fact, EPA has never banned a single one of them.
Right.
All they're doing is monitoring the levels in our drinking water now and saying this part per trillion is safe, but one over this isn't, which is gaslighting again. They aren't safe. So we need to start educating our politicians, voting the people we need into office, and then educating them zero tolerance for chemical toxins. Okay? There are myths that we're living by and realities that we need to start to implement. Zero tolerance for chemical toxins. If they're in your community, there is no safe level for your kids or yourself. When public officials say that the levels are within safe amounts, they're saying that for a big, broad population so they can allow the economic interest to prevail. They're lying to you. Zero tolerance.
I'm going to have to let that be the last word, but thank you both, Dr. WHUR and David Simon, for spending some time with us. I appreciate it. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, August 14th. I'm Harold Fisher.